Hello, welcome or welcome back to the channel. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you're good. And welcome to a recommendation video for some of the Tomes and Treasures Readathon prompts. If you don't know what the Tomes and Treasures Readathon is, it is a readathon that I am co-hosting with the lovely Smash, aka Ash from Ashley's Bookish Life. It's running from April 1st to April 30th and it is D&D inspired. I will leave both announcement videos linked down below for you if you'd like to check it out. And our first round is going to be to create your character. To create your character, there is like 10 categories to fill and 9 of those have prompts and all of those have options. So obviously I can't do a recommendation video for all of the prompts because there's like, I don't even know how many, probably around 100. Some of them as well, it's like this setting or this vibe, and that's very open to interpretation. So me and Smash are just doing recommendation videos for the race and class prompts. I don't know why I'm showing you, you can't see it, but that's what we're doing. For race and class, what we've done is we've taken the prompts and we split them down the middle. So Ash is doing a video for half of them and I'm doing a video for the other half. We're going to do 3 recommendations for each one. I obviously need to get some manga in there because that's just who I am as a person. So there'll be 2 books and 1 manga for each of mine. And there's a couple that we're not doing. Okay, let me explain. We've decided not to do recommendations for human, elf, half-orc and Goliath because the prompts are very kind of like to your personal taste. Human is a safe bet, so it's like a 5-star read or a reread. I can't really recommend that to you. It depends what you like. Elf is a beautiful cover, which is very subjective. It's whatever you find beautiful. Similarly, half-orc is a questionable cover, so that just depends on what you don't like on covers or what you think looks weird. And Goliath is intimidating read, and what I find intimidating you might not, and vice versa. So we're just not doing those at all. But the rest of the races will have been split. This is not even race, so I didn't need to tell you that right now, but I did anyway. I'll probably repeat myself in the next video. I am feeling super lazy today, and in a move that I'm sure will piss editing Gemma off no end, I can't be bothered to get any of the books down, so I'll put a picture here. That's how we're doing it. We've each taken 3 magical classes and 3 martial classes. I think I've explained everything. It's really not that complicated. It's a recommendation video. I'm making it way more complicated than it needs to be. Let's get into the recs. So we'll start with the magical classes, and the first class that I have recs for is Cleric, and the prompt for this one is to read a book with religious undertones. So my first recommendation is Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. I messaged Smash and I was like, this has religious undertones, right? Because I remember part of it taking place in a church, and I'm pretty sure it has quite a lot of religious stuff going on. I'm just very forgetful. This is about, I think it's pronounced Yadriel? I think it's Yadriel, who comes from a very traditional Latinx family, and they are struggling to accept his gender identity. And he would like to kind of do a ritual to become a brujo, I think it's pronounced. And they're kind of like not really wanting him to do that because they're not seeing his true gender. So he decides to do it himself and it kind of goes wrong. He's trying to summon his cousin's ghost, but he ends up summoning the ghost of like the bad boy from his school, and obviously him, Julian, he doesn't want to go, so now they're trying to figure out what happened so that they can all get what they want. And there's rituals and things take place in churches and cemeteries, so it definitely has those religious undertones. Probably the worst explanation of that book ever. You are welcome. My second recommendation is Whisper Down the Lane by Clay McLeod Chapman. This is all to do with the Satanic Panic. So obviously there are lots of religious undertones because it was very much kind of Christians that feared the Satanic Panic. So you've got Christianity, you've got Satan worshippers. It's a whole thing. This is about this guy who's linked to something that happened when he was a very small child that was to do with the Satanic Panic, and something's happening in the present and you're not really sure what's going on, but there's definitely religious talk in this. Well, I say religious talk, but you know, like satanic rituals are mentioned quite a bit, and you're not sure whether they're real rituals or someone trying to scare him and what's going on. And it's a really, really enjoyable book. I think it got marketed a little bit wrong because I think it was kind of marketed as pure horror, and I really do think it's more of a dark thriller with horror undertones or horror aspects. So yeah, don't be put off if you've seen it in horror categories, because I wouldn't say this is necessarily a horror. It's just quite dark. And the subject matter, I find the Satanic Panic really interesting anyway. So anything around the Satanic Panic, I automatically am keen to try. So, but I really, really enjoyed this one. And then my manga recommendation is going to be Platinum End. I read this really recently, and this is about this guy who has had a really shit life, and he's kind of just on the verge of unaliving himself, and an angel saves him because angels are selecting people to kind of like compete to be the new god. To be honest, it's not religious undertones, it's religious tones, overtones, all the tones. I really, really enjoyed the first volume. The artwork was really good, and the angels are quite dark, so I love that. Our second magical class is Sorcerer, and the prompt for this one is to read a book with an innate magical ability, which basically means they're born with it. The first recommendation I have is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This is about a guy who works for the Department to Control Magical Use. That's not what it's called, but he works for a department that is kind of like monitoring magical use, and he gets sent to this kind of home almost, where this guy has all these magical kids, and it's kind of to kind of check in on them because they're supposed to be super dangerous. So all of the kids in this have like these abilities that they were born with. This could also work for the religious undertones, now I think about it, because one of them is literally like Lucifer basically, like the Antichrist. When he gets to the home, he kind of finds that all is not what it seems, and there's something between him and the guy that runs the orphanage. That's the word I was looking for, orphanage. And yeah, it's really cute, it's really wholesome. It has a sequel coming out soon. I don't know that it needs a sequel, but I'm damn well going to read it. My second recommendation is Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. I love the Simon Snow trilogy so much. The first book is basically, you're following this guy Simon, who is like the chosen one, and he goes to like a magical school. I like the magical system in this. I didn't like it to start with, but now I actually really like it, and because it's all about the power of words. So words that become really popular because they're like in songs or they're phrases, they become like how wizards and witches cast their spells. Simon is the chosen one, and he does not get on with his roommate until he does. And yeah, Simon and Baz, honestly, I love them. So yeah, I actually really want to reread this because I love the discussions in this series about what it means to be the chosen one. I just think it's really well done. And my manga pick is Mashal. This is about this guy called Mash, who is born into a world where everybody is magical and he is not. And people that are not magical, they are dealt with, if you know what I mean. So he's kind of been in hiding his entire life and training to be really physically strong. He's kind of not stupid, he's just very kind of like deadpan and just takes things very literally. The guy that raised him has put all of this emphasis on making him physically strong so that if anyone ever comes for him, he can like defend himself. But then something happens and he ends up enrolling in magical school, and he uses his physical abilities to pretend to have magic, and it's hilarious. It's such a fun time. It's so silly. I've loved the anime so much, and so far I've read like 3 volumes of the manga, and I'm just really enjoying it. It's a good time. And our final magical class is Wizard, which is to read a book with featured studying. This is a fairly easy one to fill because anything set in a school or university would fit, but here are some options for you. I am of course going to start with Bunny by Mona Awad. This is one of my favourite books. It's weird as shit, and I love it. We're following this woman who goes and joins this really prestigious writing program, and there's only like 4 or 5 of them on the course, and she is very much on her own. All the others are in like this little clique and they call each other Bunny, and it's all very weird, and she's not involved in that until she is, and then it gets weirder. There is so little I can tell you about Bunny, but if you really like weird shit, join me. My second recommendation is If We Were Villains by ML Rio. This is one of my favourite kind of like dark academia thrillery type books ever. It gets like linked with secret history a lot, like they're always kind of said in like the same sentence, and I gotta tell you, I've read both and I much prefer this one. This is about this group of really kind of pretentious students at this Shakespeare, I don't think it's a Shakespeare, maybe it's a Shakespeare course. It's all heavily Shakespeare, heavily, and they're putting on like these Shakespeare plays, and something happens and one of them has been in prison for a really long time, and when he gets out, the detective that was working on the original case is trying to get to the bottom of what actually happened, because although this guy went to prison, the detective himself is not even really sure what happened, and he really wants to know. I think he's about to retire. That might be bullshit, but I think he's about to retire, and he's like, I need to know what really happened. So he's trying to kind of like get the guy to tell him the truth because it's done and dusted now. He just wants to know for like his own peace of mind. I loved it. Kind of want to reread this too. Don't have time for all these rereads. Kind of want to make time. And my manga rec is Blue Exorcist. This is my go-to whenever it's like a school prompt, because even if it's not happening in that volume, they're always students because they are learning to be exorcists. So they're always studying, right? This is about Rin Okamura. He finds out he is the son of Satan and goes to this school to learn to become an exorcist so that he can one day kill Satan because of something that happens at the beginning of the series. It's one of my absolute favourites. I love these characters. I love this world so much. I've been slowly reading it because I don't want it to be over, but I recommend it to everyone because it's just such a good series. There is a school setting, but they're also kind of constantly learning, because even when they're on the job, they have like adults with them explaining this, showing them how to do this. Like, it's all kind of considered learning, so it definitely counts. But there is definitely classroom scenes that take place. Whether they'll be in the volume that you pick up depending on where you're on the series, I can't say, but they're always learning, and that counts. On to our martial classes, and we're kicking it off with Barbarian, which is to read a thick book. General consensus is that anything over 500 pages would be considered a thick book or a big read. So that is kind of like your threshold. Anything over 500 pages and above would definitely work. My go-to for thick book is always going to be my Lord of the Rings binder, because it's like 1,000 pages. Everyone knows what Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien is, but on the off chance that you've been living under a rock, let me tell you. In this, we are following this hobbit called Frodo, who is tasked to take this kind of evil ring, or it belongs to like an evil guy and he's linked to it, and destroy it. He is helped by other hobbits, elves, dwarves and humans. They go off in a little fellowship and they set out. It is like the quintessential fantasy quest as far as I'm concerned. I absolutely love this series. The films are amazing. I read this bind up when I was like 11, and I don't understand because I'm too terrified to pick it up. But I do kind of want to reread this using the audiobooks because Andy Serkis does them. And Andy Serkis, if you don't know, was the voice of Gollum in the movies, and he is absolutely amazing. So I would really like to listen to them again. But this is just, what an absolutely amazing book series. It's 3 books, but it's in one, so it counts. You know, I'm pretty sure he wrote it as one book, so I own it as one book, so it definitely counts as a thick one. My second recommendation is going to be Battle Royale by Kushin Takami. Now, I definitely think I've butchered that. Koshin Takami. I read this last year, and oh my god, it's so good. This is basically, it's like a Japanese classic, and it's about all these kids that get dropped off on an island and basically have to fight to the death. It is Hunger Games before Hunger Games. Like, I'm pretty sure it inspired it. It is an amazing book. Like, oh, so good, so good. And it is long. I think it's like 600 odd pages, but I flew through it. And for manga, you could literally use any omnibus. But obviously I'm going to suggest that you use Attack on Titan because you can get the 3-in-1 omnibuses, or you can get the big colossal editions. The big, big, big ones. All right, Chandler. Let me bore you by explaining Attack on Titan for the 1 millionth time on this channel. But it's basically set in a world where Titans appeared, and what's left of humanity lives in this like massive walled city, or walled like country, I guess. And one day a massive Titan appears and kicks in the wall, and you're following them trying to like figure out what the Titans are doing, what their deal is, what's going on, and trying to kind of save humanity. That's not a great description, but I find it really hard to describe Attack on Titan because it's just everything. It's just everything. Our next martial class is Fighter, and the prompt is to read a book with a battle. This can be a mental battle, a physical battle, so like a lot of fantasies will work with this, especially like high fantasies where they have those big battle scenes. My first recommendation is So This Is Ever After by F.T. Lukens. F.T. Lukens is one of my favourite authors because they write this kind of high fantasy but cosy, kind of. It's really hard to describe. Like, there are stakes, but it also is just really soft and gentle, and I just love the way they write. The last 3 of their books, me and Becca from the Becca Fowl have buddy read, and we just love their stuff so much. So there's a new one coming out this year, and yes, we will be buddy reading it, I'm assuming. Just put it out there. I would say So This Is Ever After is like the most fantasy of the 3 books so far, and we're following this group of people that have just defeated the bad guy. We're picking up where normally the story would end, and one of them becomes like the king, but there are some serious conditions, and like if you don't have like a partner, you need to get married, or there's this like, I think I would guess you would call it like a curse. His best friend, he's like the mage of the group, and our main character has a lot of feelings for his friend, but doesn't really want to act on them because he doesn't want to ruin his friendship. So it's kind of that against a fantasy backdrop with a curse, and there are battles that take place. Obviously they've just, the first bit is like the end of a battle, but there's a lot of things that go through it that you could class as battles. My second recommendation is more about a mental battle, because I'm going to rec Matt Haig's non-fiction work, and I'm going to use Reasons to Stay Alive. But really, any of his 3 books. There's Reasons to Stay Alive, Notes on a Nervous Planet, and The Comfort Book. The Comfort Book I haven't read, but I'm assuming it's in the same vein. These are non-fiction where he is just telling you his story with like depression and how he copes with it. And I found it like such a good read. There were so many things, I think it's like depression and anxiety that he has. And there were so many things that I kind of took away from it myself. So many relatable things. So he tells you anecdotes about when his mental health's been really bad, and then he tells you these are some coping mechanisms that I use, maybe they'll work for you. At no point is he saying this will definitely work for everyone and claiming that he's solved the problem, but he's just pointing out some things that he's found over the years of having these conditions that have helped him, and he's sharing them in the hopes that they'll help someone else. And my manga rec is Keiju number 8. This series is fast becoming a favourite. It's about this guy called Kafka Hibano who works for like a Keiju cleanup crew. So there's these big Keijus that attack Japan, and there's these really cool soldiers that come and kill them, and then his role is to kind of clean up the bodies. But he wanted to be in this like defense force, he wanted to fight them. So he's an older protagonist, he's about 30, older. Something happens and he becomes part Keiju, and that kind of gives him a few more abilities, and he's able to try again and go for the defense force. And it's him kind of like going on that journey. Honestly, it's so good. There is a lot of battles in it because they're constantly fighting Keiju. I love the art style. I love the actresses. I think they're really well done. And we have an anime coming soon, which I'm very excited for. So yeah, can't wait to continue the manga myself, and you should definitely give it a try. And our final class for this video is going to be Ranger, and the prompt for that is a book that features hunting. And my first recommendation, just Becca Fowl, clown warning, okay? In 3, 2, 1, Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Caesar. And now Editing Gem is going to do something with this cover just so that the clown is not visible. We good? We're good. So Clown in a Cornfield is basically if you took like a 90s slasher film and you set it in a small town with killer clowns in a big cornfield. It's great. We're following this girl and her dad who moved to a town because her dad is a doctor and the doctor has left, and she is just kind of settling in. She's kind of starting to make some friends. She gets invited to this big party, and then shit goes down. It is so good. It really does feel like a slasher, and there's a lot of kind of like discussions that go on in this. The same for the second one. So if you've read the first one, you can use the second one for this for sure. So the way Clown in a Cornfield fits the prompt is that the killer clown is hunting the teenagers in the cornfield. I don't necessarily think I've done a very good job of explaining how some of these fit the prompts, but that is my favourite one. So I'm definitely making sure that you understand my logic there. And this is probably my second favourite take on this prompt. I'm going to recommend Summer Suns by Lee Mandello. This is one of my favourite books. We're following this guy who is supposed to follow his best friend to, I think it's Vanderbilt, to study, but there's a delay, like he's finishing up some stuff and his friend goes down early, and there might have been something more between them, but before they ever really get to figure that out, his friend dies, and everyone tells him that his friend did it to himself, but he does not believe that, so he is hunting the truth. I love that prompt, Ben, so much. I think it's perfect, so that definitely works. if you haven't read Summer Suns, if you like Southern Gothics with really kind of creepy shit going on because they have this thing from their past and there's this weird kind of ghostly vibe to it. Oh, it's just... I reread this recently and I don't need to reread it again, but I kind of want to. This was a bad idea because now I just want to reread everything. And my manga prompt, I'm still torn because there's two that would work really well for kind of different reasons. So the first is Tokyo Ghoul, where we're following this guy who gets turned into like a human ghoul hybrid, and he's kind of hunted from both directions. Sort of like there's some ghouls that want to get to him, there's humans that are constantly hunting the ghouls down, there's like a whole organization whose job it is to find and get rid of ghouls. So that definitely works for hunting. And then the other one is Death Note, because in this we're following a guy who finds a notebook on the ground, and if he writes someone's name in it, they die because it was actually dropped by a Shinigami death god because he was bored. And he kind of tries to use it for good because the names he writes in are like murderers and criminals and stuff. There is then this other guy who is trying to figure out the person that is causing all these deaths because it gets to such a large scale that it's noticeable, like there's too much coincidence, and he's trying to hunt the person that's doing it. So hunting. So that's all my recommendations. And can I just say that even for me, the description of these books and manga has been just awful. Just awful. But hopefully my terrible descriptions will convince you to go and read the actual synopsis, and then you'll read them, because these are all fantastic. I'm just really bad at describing stuff and my brain doesn't want to work this week. So this is the best we're gonna get. You may have noticed on a lot of these recommendations that I've tried to bend the prompts as much as possible. That was on purpose because I'm trying to show you different ways that you can use the prompts. We are all for bending prompts until they break. So please do that. Like, if you think it works, if you can justify it, I will accept it. Like 9 times out of 10, I'll allow it. So just a reminder, the other classes are on Smash's video. That should now be live. And if I've had some brain power, I'll have added the link down below. If I haven't, I will have tagged her, so go check her out. In the comments, let me know a book that you think would fit for one of these prompts, or a way that you think you could bend one of these prompts, or if you just want me to know you're here, that purple heart is always appreciated. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're not already subscribed and you'd like to see more content from me, remember to hit that button, leave a like if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one.